recording.
149,
Well,
that's right.
don't you have a question on 148? We can do it.
It's practice and review, so.
That's all right, we can do it. We're learning. All right.
Well,
Let's
really
all
just-
take a look at number 6 on page 148. All right, and we will see what's happening there. How many finite verbs do you see in that sentence? Or where is the finite verb? If you just scan your eye across that, what do you see? Just to assess, since it's a hard one, we're going to assess this.
What do you call that, infinitive? Well, there's an infinitive.
It looks like there's an infinitive. Where's the infinitive?
Pauline.
Okay, yeah, that's an infinitive. It looks like there's another infinitive.
Would that be
This would be particularly difficult. if you
on the
were
lake
here.
say?
Horrible.
The other infinitive is RI.
It is.
Oh.
We're picking up verbals, but we don't have the main verb yet. Where's the main verb?
On the lake.
That's right, ella lese. Ella lese is the main verb. It's from what?
Is it from Lalao?
Again, it's from laleo. So what do you see?
The
You
augment,
see an augment,
lengthening coupling.
lengthening of the coupling vowel. Yes, a sigma temporal infinitive. So does saw, set ring a bell? All right, so aorist, active indicative, third singular from laleo, to speak. So he spoke parabolain, feminine accusative, right? So he spoke a parable, kat auton. You might easily forget that kata with the genitive means against.
Against him.
So yes, he parable against him. Hosta is a result adverb. So that, with the result that, now, and hosta with the infinitive is a very usual construction in Greek. With the result that they, and then ri is from iro, and it's an aorist infinitive, aorist active infinitive. So, so that to take up with reference to them stones, bad English, right? But autus is accusative. Now that can either be the direct object of the infinitive, or it can be the so-called subject of the infinitive. And that's what it is here. It's the subject of the infinitive. In other words, it describes who's doing the action of taking up. In fact, we have two accusatives. Lethus is also accusative. That's the direct object of the infinitive. So, with the result that they, in English, we kind of have to use a regular verb instead of a infinitive. With the result that they took up stones. Now, we're giving it a past tense there. We're giving it a past tense, not necessarily because it's aorist. Aorist means it's just undefined action. But why would we need to translate that in the past tense, probably?
It's a result.
Because the
Infinitive of a result.
No, that's not why.
Because he's about to throw it, so have it to throw.
No, that's not why. So what if it said, he is speaking a parable against them so that
Well,
they
he
would...
spoke, so it's past.
Because of the elements, right?
That's right, because he spoke in the past, so probably taking up stones happened in the past. Although the context might tell you that he's spoken in the past, and they're taking up stones now. But probably we're going to give that a past transition. If we're not going to use an infinitive in English, we're going to have to, to give it some sort of tense. So, do you understand? So that they took up stones to cast upon him. So he spoke a parable against them, so that they took up stones to cast upon him. And the two autos words refer to the same antecedent. Okay, now that's hard because you have two accusatives related to that infinitive, and that infinitive is a weird form anyway. You have two accusatives, one the so-called subject of the infinitive, and the other one the direct object. Now, number 6 on the New Testament side, assuming we can't just fly through and read it, where do you see a finite verb? Agenata, very good. How would you parse that? What's it from?
Aorist middle, indicative third.
Okay, it's, no.
Genomai.
Genomai, so it's a second aorist,
Third
middle,
sing-
middle deponent, third singular, remember the deponent there. So, and it came about, and this is also a typical, let's see, we're looking at Luke, and especially in more refined Greek in the New Testament, and Luke is that, because it's more like classical Greek, because he's more educated, right? You see this agenata all the time. It came about. And it came about, and I believe the grammar mentioned this, ento with the infinitive, in baptizing. Well, this is a locative of time, right? So it's while, he was being baptized or something like that, because it's aorist passive infinitive, right? So I think that's probably someplace in the chapter. I think I remember seeing it in the chapter, but whether it's in the chapter or not, that's true. Ento with the infinitive, which means the infinitive is being used as a locative of time. It is translated when, during something. Okay. So it came about when he was being baptized. Now with these ellipses, this is kind of weird.
Being baptized?
Yeah, baptizo. So I have psi, sasai, thenai. So I have an aorist passive infinitive.
That'd be while being, right?
So I don't know. I gotta look at the rest of the sentence to see how this is all going to work together. But I do know what kind of. I know that it came about, and I got that kind of construction with the infinitive. Now I got to figure out what ton la'on is. That's accusative. And Jesu baptisthenos. Kai prasu kamanu. So baptism, and so I'm noticing I have a couple of participles here, right? And if my memory doesn't fail me, participles in the genitive can be used in the construction of a genitive absolute, right? So that's it's in my mind. I don't know what's happening here, because there's a noun in the genitive, Jesu, eventually in the genitive, and two participles in the genitive. So that could be what we have in that center section there. Anet o thenai ton uranon. So what is anet o thenai from?
It's an infinitive. But from anoigo?
Anoigo. Yes, there you go. Open. To open, that's right. So here's another aorist passive infinitive. We're open. Now what was open? The heavens were open.
So, I'm sorry, I missed that. That's, so being open, is that what it would be?
Well, we're not quite sure yet, because we just know it's an aorist passive infinitive, and I'm gonna presume I'm gonna proceed on the assumption that those participles are forming a genitive absolute construction. Right. The ellipsis periods kind of make it difficult mentally to deal with this, because they're dividing the words where they should not be divided.
Right. I agree completely.
Because ton la'on actually goes with baptisthenai, in my opinion, which matters. Meaning it is the so-called subject of the infinitive at that point. So I would say, and it came about while the people were being baptized, and I'm putting that in the past tense because it came about in the past tense, right? So, and it came about while the people were being baptized. Also, Jesus being baptized and praying, the heavens were open. So I would say that's grammatically unconnected to the sentence. And then we have a voice from heaven. Genestai, what are you going to do with that? Genestai, so this is going to be an aorist because of the again, right? Stem change, second aorist.
It's infinitive.
So,
Having become or came.
a voice from heaven
Came
coming,
out,
came.
came out of heaven.
Yeah, so this is just weird infinitive stuff. It's kind of complicated. It's from Luke, right? You know, Luke and the book of Hebrews and other places, Luke, Acts, and Hebrews, those are two very tough authors.
So Ken and I were talking about, like, I don't know why we're doing stuff out of Luke, because, I mean, it's just so,
It's just so you don't get too overconfident.
yeah.
And here's the quote, and this is a direct quote. You are my son, the beloved one. You are my beloved son. So it came about while the people were being baptized, and Jesus being baptized and praying, the heavens being opened, a voice coming from heaven. Now, you know, what's being left out of here? I don't know. Why is he leaving this stuff out of the sentence? Or one, the sentence is going to be way too long for you, and it's going to be too hard for you, and blah, blah, blah. It's from Luke, after all, right? So, yeah, why do you put it in there? I don't know. It's good, humbling stuff. So I can understand why you struggle with that.
Let's go to 9.
Yeah, can we look at 9 at the
Glossize?
from glossa. Is it, that's a theological issue there if you're saying to speak in, well, I'm not saying it, to speak tongues, or if it's the meaning of tongues or languages as far as a language that's not heavenly, let's say. I mean, glossary instead of glossolalia in that sense.
Yeah, well, it says, I wish for you all to speak in tongues. But even more, in order that you might prophesy.
Or speaking.
But which is greater, the one prophesying or the one speaking in tongues?
Right.
I think it's been how you answer that question, depending on what denomination you are.
Is it a question?
Maybe it's a vocabulary question that, if they say that glossolalia is the, let's say, the heavenly language of prayer, or whatever you want to say from the charismatic side of the sense, does it really, vocabulary speaking, is it actually talking about a language, like when in the upper room, obviously that was not they were speaking in earthly languages, because there were many people there from other parts of the earth. They were hearing the testimony of the glory of God in their own languages. It wasn't just a bunch of languages that was emotional sound or something like that. Everyone, yeah.
There's no question mark in here, so, and I was listening to you. The one prophesying is greater than the one speaking in tongues.
Right, because it's led, obviously, because
what it says.
Well,
unless he interpret in order that the church might receive edification. That's what the rest of it says that he put in there. Why you let him define glossa for you? Glossa just means a language. And so what they do is they run wild with 1 Corinthians 13. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels. Oh, tongues of angels. That must be, the gibber. The gibber we use in church, right?
That's from a rebuke.
Well, yes, it is, and it's hyperbolic language. Read the rest of it. Though I give all my possessions to feed the poor. That's probably not an everyday occurrence. Though I give my body to be burned. Hyperbolic language, right? He's saying that if I could do these things that really are even impossible for me to do, but if I were that extremely marvelous, even if I could speak in the language of angels, but have not love, my speaking would be a noisy gong, a plain symbol. So they take that hyperbolic language and go, oh, yeah, speak in the language of angels. That's it. Forgive me if anybody's charismatic, but.
No, but do you think that here in number 9, 1 Corinthians 14, that they're talking about the glossolalia in the sense of, you know, an unintelligible language, or similar to just the earthly languages that were used in the upper room when the, you know,
Well,
chapter 2.
I think in all likelihood, see, you had tongues spoken in cultic languages in the first century too. In fact, tongues were associated with the temple prostitutes. You know, you don't have to let your mind wander too long to figure that out. So, you know, Paul was trying to rein in, I think, the practice of speaking in tongues, and in those, you know, cultic temple sort of rituals, you know, tongues was probably babbling. But in my opinion, I think it's probable that the tongues, that is the biblical tongues that we see practiced, that it's, you know, the true real thing, was probably, you know, the gift of tongues. There's probably somebody, you know, for example, it wasn't these languages, but you get the idea. So somebody speaking English to somebody who only knows Spanish, then even though they're speaking English, that person hears in Spanish, possibly. Or I think I'm speaking English, but it's coming out Spanish, you know. Or I know I'm speaking Spanish, even though I don't know Spanish, or whatever the case may be. I'm speaking a language I don't know. And if you have the gift of interpretation, maybe you can understand the language that you've never learned and you don't know. So I think in all likelihood, based on what happened in Acts chapter 2, with the speaking of tongues, I think that's what happened there, where it says everyone heard in their own language. And remember, tongues are a sign to the Jews.
Wait, are you saying that gift was a gift of hearing?
Interpretation. The gift of interpreting tongues. The gift of, you know, you're able to understand the language that you never learned.
So the gift of tongues, let me make sure I understand what you're saying. It wasn't they spoke in a different language, but people heard their own language. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because they spoke in that language.
So also,
So who's the gift given to then? The hearer?
He's saying it's possible, but always.
I think that if I'm speaking in tongues, I am mentally carrying on as if I'm speaking in my own language, but what's coming out of my mouth is something else.
Okay.
Could it be like the gift of tongues would be the person speaking and it coming out as a different language, and the gift of interpretation is different, whereas the person is speaking their language but they're hearing it in their own language?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really follow, to be honest. But I think if you said what I think
like
you
the
did.
gift of speaking in tongues would be the speaker who has the gift, and he's speaking in, you know, the other language, but the gift of interpretation may be that he's speaking his language, but he's hearing it in his own language. And so this guy, I'm not sure.
Well, I think there's a difference. You know, let's say it's you and me and Pastor Joe in a room, and you and I, my wife would yell at me for my English. Don't do that around kids. She doesn't really say that, but I'm sure she thinks it. Okay, you and I speak English, and Joe speaks, you know, Swahili or something.
Italian.
Italian, yes, there you go. We might as well have this real to life. Right? So Joe speaks Italian, but he doesn't speak English. So I'm speaking, and whether or not I don't know what my experience is speaking in tongues, but whatever happens, I don't know Italian, but Joe's hearing Italian, and so I have the gift of tongues. And he is not having a gift necessarily, because he's just hearing Italian, right? Because what's coming out of my mouth.
So you don't know what you're
is
speaking.
Italian.
Right.
Okay.
I guess I probably know what I'm saying, because I know what I intend to say, but you know, I'm not able.
You don't know why he understands it.
Yeah.
If he doesn't speak English.
Right. Now, you don't know Italian either, but you also understood it. So you have the gift of
Well,
interpretation.
hang on for a second.
Yeah.
Hang on for a second. If you know what you intend to say, why do you need an interpreter? Because you could just go ahead and interpret it yourself.
Well, I could, but now I'm speaking English, and everybody else speaks English too, so.
Yeah,
if
but
somebody-
they heard, but they
if
heard
somebody
in another
inter-
language.
Yeah, but if
so-
someone interprets it, then he can say, here's what he said, and maybe I can say, yeah, that is what I said, there's confirmation. Or maybe I don't know what I said, who knows? I might, but I don't think I'm just going, yeah, I'm honestly whipping out the tongue and my mind turned off, probably. I mean, Peter was preaching. So he was saying some things that they heard in their own language. It's altogether possible that tongues was an ecstatic utterance as well. And I have to really hold these things lightly because I can't really be sure. That's the way I look at it. You know, but what makes me nervous is when you have to go to a class to learn to speak in tongues, and when they tell you just start making utterances, and pretty soon it'll come together, and just let it flow, and blah blah blah. You know, I mean, if somebody just starts speaking in tongues and does an interpretation, and that just happens, you know, I guess you got to deal with it. But I'm really uncomfortable about going to class to learn it. Yes.
Right.
Where does it say that interpretation is a spiritual gift?
Well, it is either in Romans 12 or 1 Corinthians 12. If
I
indeed-
didn't think that it was though. Maybe it is in 1 Corinthians 12. I just got my Greek, I guess. I don't know.
There's
Or
church.
maybe it comes out of 1 Corinthians 14, where he talks about the need for interpreting, an interpreter.
But I mean, it's not listed as a spiritual gift. Could it not just be someone who actually speaks the language?
Maybe. You got a computer going, can you search 1 Corinthians for interpretation or something like that?
Yeah.
And, you know, I have to respect, I have to show respect to people, you know, who believe in speaking in tongues, you know, I mean, I kind of, you know, risk, I guess I'm on tape, you know, I risk offending people. I guess I'm not too worried about that.
Isn't the gospel pretty effective?
I guess. But you know what, you can have charismatic people, you know, in your class, and they should not be offended. I guess I wouldn't be too offended if they made fun of some of the ways I differ from him either. But, however, I do differ quite strenuously with those practices, and protect my church from them. Because I think that mentality is dangerous, actually, to be honest with you. I have had actually staff people at my church who were charismatic, or as they call it, Pentecostal, practice speaking in tongues.
12, 10?
At a Baptist church?
But we had a very good understanding. I said, you know, we are not here to make people make tongue speakers. You know, we
Distinguishing spirits into various kinds of tongues into another interpretation.
Did you
respect
inherit
that.
them?
No, right?
You hired them?
Brought him in, yeah. In fact, it was a counselor, and it was a woman, and she did a fabulous job counseling. But, you know, when she counseled people from a charismatic church, she could talk about that part of her belief. When she counseled people from my church, they didn't go there. I said, we're not making charismatics or Pentecostals here. You know, we're a Baptist church, we're making Christian, but we're not promoting that. She said, that's fine, I'm quite comfortable with it. And in worship services, I don't know what she did in worship service speaking tongues anyway. She did privately. But most of the time I forgot it, and you would never know it if you didn't know her well enough to know. So, you know, I have a lot of respect for charismatic people, but I do think, in some sense, that what can be a charismatic mentality is extremely dangerous to Christianity.
That kind of brings me to a question. What do you do when you find yourself in a situation where it's being taught? I mean, I went to a church for a class when I was at Western Baptist, and they said go to a different church service and write a paper on what you found. And there's actually a church in the area up here, and I heard it was a 2-hour-long meeting. I heard 5 minutes, some reference to the gospel, and the next 30 minutes was teaching 4, 5 through 12-year-old kids how to speak in tongues. And that, you know, this whole idea was that you tell God secrets and mysteries, and He tells you secrets, like buy silver because it's going up. I mean, honestly, I'm not even joking. I mean,
I could be wrong about this tongues thing.
what responsibility do we have, if any, to approach a leader, or you just say that's your belief?
If that's their church, we don't have any responsibility. They have the right to believe what they want to believe. if somebody comes into my church as a pastor and starts in on that, that's cut out like a cancer. And if somebody comes into my church and I'm a member of the church,
So when we talk
I
about
oppose
having,
that with all vigor. But if it's just some church down the street that I visit, they have the right to do what they want.
and we just assume that the debate for truth is continuing on in their own spiritual
We don't have
life.
responsibility for them.
But aren't they of the same faith?
If you want to sit down, but how much do we listen to the people who whip up in the parking lot and give us a paper and an envelope that says,
I read them, I check them, and I mean, but that's kind of one of the questions. I mean, we read, and I know we hear sermons of unity, and I know that it often consists of our personal church body, but
well, the unity we need to be concerned about is our local church. We need to leave the unity of the universal church to God. If we want to be involved in organizations that work on that, that's fine. But I don't believe we have a right to go, stand on somebody's doorstep at their church and say, you're wrong about this. I guess if you wanted to stop by and talk to the pastor and have a kind and gentle and unheated discussion with him about it, but you're not going to change his mind.
I wouldn't assume I would be the one changing his mind anyway.
Yeah, you probably get it all the time. I get things in the mail from people who have a particular slant on, maybe it's eschatology or pneumatology or whatever, and you're wrong. I get little booklets in the mail. I get letters in the mail. They want to come in, they want to convince me that I'm wrong, and I don't have time for that. I don't even deal with it. I don't even respond to it.
See that you don't have any standing or credibility relationally with them. So why would they listen to you?
Well, and you'd have to develop that.
I told my wife to stop sending that stuff.
Yeah. But here's the thing, we have better things to do. We have more productive fields to work in than that.
I mean, there is the aspect that you're going to seminary for a purpose, and if God has called you to be a voice of reformation, if He's called you to a broader, more influential purpose, like those men and women of God that we've read about, or just by virtue of being in Dr. Stanley's Greek class, and you get a truer understanding of the word, then you might feel obligated to ask the Lord for a discerning way to have that influence bear fruit in the broader body of Christ.
Well, for that same class, I went to a Greek Orthodox service, and I don't think that I would, I don't know, it might be a little different, but when I was interviewing the priest, I wasn't thinking back in my head, completely wrong, I don't know, like you say,
Well, besides that, what if they're right and you convince them otherwise?
I don't think they're right about their
See, here's the thing.
worship of
But my issue is
God-
more like when they deal with the gospel and
God-
they don't present it well.
God respects the right of someone to believe what they want. God respects the right of someone to reject Him. And they'll suffer the consequences for that. And so will we. God respects our right. Balance that with Calvinism however you want to, but God obviously allows people to reject Him and go to hell. That's extreme. God allows people to choose to have bad doctrine, and I bet my doctrine's not all perfect. So we have to come from a standpoint of respecting that with people. So we don't. I think it's wholly unproductive to go to your local Catholic church and try to convince them that their view on Mary is all washed up. There might be some slight chance of success, but I just think we have better things to do than that. You could use your time better than that. And it's the same thing when people from cults come. I like nothing better than to get in a great argument with a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon, who wants to whip out the Greek text on you. That's just fun. But John tells us in his letters that these heretics come, don't even say hi to them. I used to want to have a discussion with them and see if we can get them saved. That's wrong. Why? Because your neighbors are going to look at that and think you associate with them. And all you do is give them credibility. When a Mormon or a Jehovah's Witness is going door to door, it's wrong for you to have a conversation with them. Just send them packing immediately.
That's the way you take that first step?
Yeah. And besides that, you are not going to convert them while they're in the process of trying to convert you. I mean, I think it's a psychological impossibility practically. They are not going to, meet at their church and all gather together, and go off into the neighborhood knocking on doors and come back and say, hey, guess what? I met a Baptist and now I'm Baptist. That's not going to happen. If their neighbor talks to them in another context, on a Thursday night instead of a Friday night when they might be visiting, or whatever night it is, at that point, they're a little more probably open to listening and changing their mind. But if they're going out to evangelize, they are not going to be any more likely than you are going out to evangelize to become a Jehovah's Witness. You're not going to meet at church at 7 o'clock on Thursday night and go through the neighborhood and come back and say, Pastor Joe, I'm a Jehovah's Witness now.
No, but you might come back with questions to ask.
Or like my roommate called up a Mormon missionary and a missionary in training for 2 weeks, so they have meetings every Saturday or every night at 7.
But you can keep them from going with somebody else. But,
Yeah.
but I believe the second John, isn't it? That tells us. I think that the advice that John gives us in that passage is, I've done it, but I think the advice is don't. Because what's it doing to your testimony if your neighbor sees them come into your house for a cup of tea? They don't know what you're saying to them. They don't know you're trying to change their mind. All they see is, hey, they invited them in. What's your neighbor going to do? Well, if Joe invited him in, maybe I'd invite him in. But, that's not one of those things I'd die for. Okay, chapter...
Yeah, I've wrestled with that a lot. I don't know.
I think, find them at a time when they're not in the role of a false teacher.
Yeah. That's kind of the way, I've thought about, and I haven't had Mormons or Jehovah's Witnesses approach me since I've changed my view on that. But next time I do, I'll say, well, can we meet up another time? We'll go have some coffee.
I think that's perfectly fine.
Mormon garb, just talk.
One time we had, I think that's perfectly reasonable. One time we had a couple of Mormon missionaries come onto our campus when I was in Bible college. We gave those two a whooping they're never going to forget. But to what point? Really? We probably should have been memorizing forms of our Greek verbs or something instead of doing it.
Yeah, and I gave some Jehovah's Witnesses a whooping once because I had just got done spending a lot of time studying Ezekiel, and I had this big book of my notes on it and everything, and they come in there, they start talking about Ezekiel. I was like, hold on a second. And I went and I got this big old 2-inch binder, plopped it down, come on, okay. But it didn't do any good. They didn't convert or anything. Yeah, that I know.
There's got to be, I don't know, there's got to be some psychological thing. There's got to be a huge psychological barrier to someone who puts on a name tag, and comes to your door and says, I want to share with you, my faith. And you're going to try to convert them. There's got to be a huge psychological barrier at that point to the fact that, they're not there to be converted, they're there to convert. What are you going to do? I think it's pretty good. Let's meet for coffee at a different time. That'd be great.
Yeah. Wear a shirt with some color in it.
Yeah. Don't make me call you elder.
Yeah.
All right, page 156, lesson 26.
Oh wait, how do you parse prophe to nete? I couldn't find the vocabulary word.
Well, I'd love to see it in print.
It's page 150.
50 on that sentence we were working on.
The present active, participle, nominative masculine singular.
Prophe to a ted? Say it again.
Yeah.
Prophe to,
Yeah, say your parsing again.
it's a present active participle, nominative masculine singular. Prophe to all.
Well, if you're parsing mate zone, you'd have it just right. Prophet 2-8 is from Prophet 2-0.
Oh, wait, that's a present active subjunctive second plural. I was looking at the other one a little further down.
You see, I'm not surprised. You parsed the next word perfectly. I'm not surprised you were on the line that too far down.
It's a present active subjunctive second plural
That's right.
from Prophet 2.
There you go. Perfect. Well, okay.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't have that word.
Prophet to, I mean, what is it, to prophesy? They didn't give it to us.
You never had that word?
Yeah, that's funny.
Right.
Every once in a while I'll do that.
You should write them. You should actually keep track of those and send them to them and write them. You probably appreciate it for the next edition.
Yeah.
That should be in this list of vocabulary.
You made it difficult. I still haven't got a lexicon yet. Vin, you have a lexicon yet?
No.
Okay.
Oh, did you order one? We were actually on Amazon looking for one.
Okay. We'll talk. You and me, we'll talk.
You gotta have a lexicon. The little Arndt and Gingrich Bauer, I guess it's Denker or whatever. That thing right there, yeah, that's an excellent one right there. That's the one you need right there. Don't dick around with the rest. Just get the best. There you go.
Really?
And when you get to
This
me,
is the same
when you
one
get
that I
when you
have.
get
This is the updated one.
there you go.
Yeah, I have like the shorter lexicon, the Greek New Testament by Gingrich, but this one's revised by Frederick.
Well, if you have it by Gingrich, it's got to be hugely old.
Yeah. It is pretty old. It's normal.
Well, it's all changed since then.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great dictionary for, when you get into really wanting to do exegesis, you need to get the larger version of that, which is the real doorstop. $127.
You
And
go
then,
on.
if you really want to get serious, you need Little and Scott, which is bigger yet. Classical Greek dictionary, but includes the New Testament, so you can see how the word is used beyond the New Testament.
But that's a theological dictionary, isn't it?
No,
No.
it's just the same kind of dictionary, but it just covers, a wider
All of
range of literature. Classical Greek, New Testament, stuff like that.
You want our homework?
But that's down the road. Yeah, pass your homework over to Pastor Joe. Yeah, put your translation with part of the homework.
Oh,
John is? No. We're not gonna hold on to it till you.
you need to just read it.
I know this.
I apologize. But I do have it. You want me to?
But that was the present active subjunctive ending.
You can mark it so that I know it's last.
8 was
So what are you gonna do
the
for your
present
first
active
subject?
subjunctive ending.
Well,
Q 8
Give you a book.
Prophet 2 8
you get something that doesn't have more.
That's
Yeah.
I never saw it that way.
You're gonna give me this?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Haven't even read it.
It
It even has your name in it.
Oh, my goodness.
There you go.
Well, you guys can forget your homework anytime. That's awesome.
Great.
That's liable to straighten me
I
out.
wasn't gonna bring it that.
But I will not be able to change my view, of course, until after I finish teaching.
Okay.
That's okay, we're patient
We're all patient.
and full of grace. And true.
Whoa. Well, I guess it's free grace because I didn't have to pay for that book. I do appreciate that. All right. Does this have your name in it?
What's that?
Does this have your name in it?
No. That's Ben's book.
Oh, no, he's talking about.
No, but did you?
No,
Oh,
worked on this?
I edited it down for the one volume,
No, okay.
so.
All right. We're letting our time get away from us. We gotta get going, but it is exciting to get a book. That's pretty cool. I'm gonna have shelves in my office pretty soon to put it on too.
Have you heard of Lightner?
Robert?
I don't know.
Really?
Cool.
Good. You like him? Good guy?
Yeah, it's a long time ago. Just 50 years ago.
All right, page 156. Vocabulary. Repeat the vocabulary word after me. Agros.
Agros.
Healed. Country. Ionios.
Ionios.
Eternal. Eleeo.
F sound with the E's, okay?
Yeah, F-arrow-ta-o.
F-arrow-ta-o.
I ask a question, arrow-ta-o.
Arrow-ta-o.
I ask, request, entreat. Kind of interesting because you have the same word but with a prepositional prefix. A lot of times, especially FE intensifies, but there may not be any issue of intensification here. It just may be like pretty much a synonym at this point. Karpos. Root. Krateo.
Krateo.
I seize, grasp, hold. Metanoia. Sorry. Metanaeo.
Metanoia.
I saw the verb and read the noun. Metanoia. I repent. Metanoia is the noun, repent. Us. Otos.
Otos.
Ear. You go to an otologist. Usually, I remember seeing the names for the ear, nose, and throat.
Otorhinolaryngology. Rhino.
Yeah, what you're saying.
Otorhino.
Otorhinolaryngology.
Yeah,
Otorhinolaryngology.
something like that. So it's kind of a vocabulary lesson right in itself. Hupago.
Hupago.
I go away. Go. Cairo.
Cairo.
I rejoice. Hoda.
Hoda.
Here. Hither. All right, the imperative. Of course, the imperative is the mood of commands. Imperative goes in the mood column. Present, active, imperative. Now, you don't have a first person imperative, do you? Because how do you command yourself? However, there is a way to do that in Greek, which is what?
First person plural subjective.
Yes, what's that called?
First person plural subjective.
That's right. It's called, remember Horton?
Hortatory.
Hortatory subjective. Horton used the mood. It's imperative. It's imperative that you scream in that context. Hortatory. Horton. Right? All right. So our present active imperative endings are eto, ete, etosan. What do you notice? Those are all right. What do you notice? You notice, here's what I'll tell you what you notice. You notice that the second person plural is ambiguous with the indicative at that point. All right, so the middle passive forms are u, esto, este, estosan. You also notice that the second person plural is ambiguous with the indicative.
They picked that ones to be ambiguous, I think. Didn't they?
They did. They did.
Because those are the ones that would be the most confusing, I think, or the most used.
Well, at the end of 1 Corinthians 12, I believe is where it is, where it says, desire the greater gifts, but I show you, a better way. Is it you are desiring the greater gifts? But I'll show you a better way. Love, right? Or is it desire the greater gifts? But I'll show you a better way. Well, we talked about it. Might have been homework.
Context is pretty clear on that one.
Context is what?
It's pretty clear on that one.
It depends on what church you go to.
Yeah.
All right, now our aorist active imperative is san, sato, sate, sato, san.
Wow.
The aorist middle is sai, sasto, saste, sasto, san.
Cool.
The second singular is always the weird one. Once you know the second singular, the rest, they form fairly regularly in comparison to one another. And then the aorist passive imperative is theti, theto, thete, theto-san. Now, why is the aorist form not ambiguous with the indicative?
There's no augment.
That's right, because if it's in the indicative, there's going to be an augment. If it's in the imperative, there's not going to be an augment. The ending is ambiguous, but the form altogether, the word altogether, will not be ambiguous because of that little augment thing. So you only have the ambiguity in the present imperative. All right, any questions about that? Fine. Know those for next week?
Go. Another vision, huh?
Another vision. Here's where it gets happy. The forms of the second aorist imperative are eto, ete, eto-san, and u, esto, este, esto-san. That'll make us happy. Those are the same, right? It's present. So we know outside the indicative mood, second aorist takes the same kind of endings as the present. In the indicative mood, second aorist takes the same kind of endings as the imperfect. Well, it has to be present outside the indicative because the imperfect tense only occurs in the indicative mood. Right? So
What? Oh, present what?
in the imperfect tense only occurs in the indicative mood.
Oh, true.
That's
So-
why I haven't been seeing it.
Huh? That's why you haven't seen it. That's right.
Yeah.
So if you have a second aorist outside the indicative mood, it can't take imperfect endings because there aren't any. You have to take present. Or at least endings that look present. They're really second aorist endings, right? But they're the same as the present endings. All right, tense and time in the imperative. Let's look at that paragraph 186. This is a point you should take. As is always the case outside the indicative, tense in the imperative mood does not pertain to time, but rather a kind of action. The present imperative usually implies that the action called for is to be prolonged or repeated. You could say, keep on doing this. While the aorist does not carry this implication, the distinction is not always apparent, however, and it is particularly difficult to translate this nuance into English. Aorist and present tense imperatives will often be translated the same, and sometimes an aorist imperative could be taken almost like a sergeant's bark, you know, in the context if it warrants it. Prohibitions. We know that outside the indicative mood we have may in prohibition. Negative statements have may, and let's take a look at that paragraph. Prohibitions are expressed in two ways. You read by may with the present imperative or by may with the aorist subjunctive. Did you get that? That's important. So do not do something is either going to be may with the present imperative or may with the aorist subjunctive. Prohibitions with the aorist imperative, although they would be quite logically possible, are very rare. The difference pertains to how the action is conceived. The present imperative with may forbids the continuance of an action. Often an action that is in progress, stop doing that. The aorist subjunctive with may is a categorical prohibition that views the action as a whole and often forbids action that has not yet begun. Do not begin to do that. And again, the aorist could be perceived as a more stringent barking kind of prohibition. The context warrants that. Then we have the present imperative of any other visionary set of endings, or not endings, but forms here. Isti, esto, este, esto-san. Once you know isti, you know the rest of them are pretty easy, because it looks like eto, ete, eto-san, doesn't it? But with a little sigma inserted, just to make it different. So, isti, esto, este, esto-san. Any questions on that chapter? If you'd like to do the odd of the New Testament section, I think that would be a marvelous thing. If you'd like to do number 1 of the English to Greek, I think that would be a marvelous thing. We will do chapter 27. Would you like to break now or after we talk about chapter 27?
After. It's only 7.
Here we go then.
10.
This stuff isn't all that hard, right? It's just, you know, some new forms to get familiar with. That's about it. The concepts aren't too hard, right? All right, vocabulary. Elpis.
Elpis.
Elpidas. Oh.
Elvis Presley.
Guys.
Elvis, yes. Thanks for your enthusiasm there.
Right there with you.
He's a Baptist gospel.
Yeah. All right. Exo.
Exo.
Outside. You know, you can kind of see the relationship with ek, I think, in this word, can't you?
Like exoskeleton.
Exoskeleton, that's right. Now, remember the word echo? What's that mean?
I
I
have.
have. What would that be in the future, Ken?
And so,
You would think it would be exo, wouldn't you?
but it's not apparently.
But it, because that's what it is. If my memory serves me, it's hexo. To distinguish it
Oh,
from
that's right.
this.
Oh, I didn't
But in
notice
the
that.
original, we wouldn't be able to cover it.
Well, yeah.
I think I've seen that before never noticed because I know I've seen like EXO, and that I never noticed the breather of this, so.
I'm kind of curious about why we don't learn Greek without all the accents, breathers, and all that kind of stuff.
You don't think it's hard enough?
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's a little bit like it's a little bit like the question, how can we learn Hebrew with vowel points? I
Yeah.
guess my answer would be the same.
Yeah, try walking around Israel trying to figure out what they
Yeah,
say.
read the newspaper in Israel.
Yeah.
I want those kindergarten books with the vowel points.
well, but I'm not really interested in reading like, a Greek newspaper. I want to read the Bible. And I don't know, 'cause it's just for interpretation's sake. I mean, I don't want things like that.
It's good, well, it's good to bear in mind.
Because it gives you a clue to what other people have thought, but, I mean, that's about the extent of it, isn't it?
Well, these are time-tested, if you want to call them editorial marks. They're time-tested editorial marks. It's very good to bear in mind that they are just that, editorial marks. Right? But frankly, I don't want to deal with a text that is in all capitals, with no spaces, no chapter mark, and no verse mark.
You know?
I don't. Because how do I tell you, turn to 1 John 2:10 in a class?
You can't.
And, it's
The
just,
chapters just for reference, the chapters and verses for reference purposes, and
I wonder how early the marks came in, because, you don't have to go all that far until you get texts that are not in all capitals, that have spaces, those sorts of things.
I think it was like 5th century, wasn't it? I mean, I don't know, I thought I read that somewhere.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I couldn't even venture a statement on that. But, I mean, that's a good point. It's good to bear that in mind. But it's almost like reinventing the wheel, in a sense.
Yeah.
Somebody's gone through and decided where the words break.
Right.
Now, other times where that's an issue, in a text critical sort of fashion, or an interpretive sort of fashion, yeah. But those are few and far between, and I'd rather find that in my research on that verse than have to deal with a whole text that didn't have spaces.
Right.
I mean, it's just that kind of thing. So I appreciate your commitment to the inerrant part of Scripture, but we are so helped by those things in comparison to their potential for leading us astray, that I think it's worth it. So that's a good thing. Yes?
Do we know how they taught their own children and young people to read and write?
How?
I don't know. That's what I was asking you. Do we know if they used any type of breathing marks or?
Well, I don't remember if I ever knew when the breathing marks were actually invented. That's an interesting subject, but it's a rabbit trail for right now.
I was just curious. Because
It is curious.
I was wondering if there's any reason we may have put them in the way we did because maybe that was how they taught, or maybe we found documentation.
Well, I should take a look at that and see. Does this grammar tell you anything about the origin of breathing marks? Okay, let's see. Have we done any of this? Okay, yeah, we're on the third vocabulary word. Thugater.
Thugater.
Thugatros, daughter. Thugatros. Yes. Kathos. Even as, just as. Oida?
Oida.
You don't understand? Told you all about Oida before, right? Yep. Has, he, ha. Who, which, the relative pronoun. And the astute among you, and I'm sure that's all of you, will see a whole other set of forms coming with that vocabulary word. That's exciting, isn't it? Hasos. Also, hase, hasos. Sounds like hot sauce, doesn't it?
Yes.
As great as many as.
Nothing's as great as hot
That's it. Now you know how to remember that word. Nothing's as great as hot sauce. That's good. All right. Hostis or hatis or hati. That's right.
Whoever, whichever, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
What? How come hati?
Whatever.
Bastards.
Indefinite relative pronoun. So now we've had a relative pronoun.
What's the deal with hati?
What is the deal with hati? Well, hati could be a conjunction, or hati can be a relative pronoun. But you just have to look at the context of it.
You just need to smush the words together and make them capital.
Now, where did has tis come from? Well, it comes from has, the relative pronoun, and tis, the very last vocabulary word, tis, tenos. You should know too, the indefinite pronoun. So poo is where, right? Where's Winnie the Pooh? And then tis, tenos. You need to know tenos because that's the genitive form. It probably doesn't give you tenos here because these are declined after the third declension. Tis, tenos. And tis, tenos. Now tis, tenos.
Tenos is genitive?
Yep.
T is a genitive?
Yeah, you'll see the in example.
T is.
T is neuter. So this is a two termination pronoun, which means that tis is both masculine and feminine, and T is neuter. Tenos is the genitive form of all of them, as it turns out. But interrogative pronoun, which, what, why, and the indefinite pronoun, someone, something, a certain one, a certain thing. How are you going to tell the difference?
Breathing.
Accent. Okay. The interrogative pronoun has an accent over the first iota, and the indefinite pronoun does not ever have an accent over the first iota, except unless the accenting rules and the words around it require that, which is possible but not typical. So if you remember that, accent over the first iota means hit it. That accent over the first iota reminds you of the dot under a question mark. Right? So accent under the first iota is like the dot under the question mark. So it's an interrogative pronoun if it has that accent. You'll see it in the forms. Right? Okay, here we have the interrogative pronoun and adjective. You might argue, a different way of describing it, that we have an interrogative adjective used substantively sometime. But what are you going to do? So,
interrogative. I don't know. I guess I'm not.
It's a question.
It's a question.
Yeah.
Okay.
we'll see in the examples. Like the first one. Who is teaching the children?
Yes, question.
Who or what did your mother do? Now, tis, tenos. See it there? Tis, tenos, tini, tina, tines, tenon, tissy, tenos. You don't want to throw a tissy, do you? And then the neuter, t, tenos, tini, t, tina, tenon, tissy, tina. See, it's declined after the third declension. Sigma, os, e, a, s, c, os. Blank, os, e, blank, a, c, a. So perfectly regular according to the third declension. Usage, you can see the examples. Tis, didaske, ta, tek, na. Who is teaching the children? The bottom example, T is what? What your mother did do. What did your mother do? So questions, right? What book does the woman want? See? So what is the interrogative pronoun, or who is the interrogative pronoun? Who's on first? You know. All right. You'll enjoy reading all about that. The indefinite pronoun and adjective. Again, tis, ti, tenos. See the accenting here? It's different. It's not on the first iota. Now, this pronoun is an enclitic, which means that it shares the accent with the word that comes before it. So, in other words, the word that comes before it and this word acts as a single unit with regard to accenting. You've had that before.
Oh, I see what you mean.
In paragraph 42, if you want to look that up again. There are also proclitics, which work as a single unit with the word that comes after them. Because they're pro-seeding the word. But this is a certain one or someone. So in the examples, if someone speaks, you will listen. They do not have anything against you. some of the priests believed. All right. Now, these both can be used with nouns to really modify a noun. Right? A certain man. Back in the interrogative, what book did she want? So you see how they can be used by themselves? You know, what do you want? That's used as a pronoun. Used as an adjective. What book do you want? You know, a certain one, if it's by itself, did such and such. Or it can be a certain man with the word for man did such and such. Or a certain child, a certain prophet, or whatever. Okay? So just some forms to learn and remember the accent sort of situation. Now, next page, 164, we get the relative pronoun. So now we're having all kinds of happy pronouns. The relative pronoun is very much like the article. It's like the article in its origin. It's like the article in its form. And you know, it just simply means who or which. A relative pronoun is used to form a relative clause. Like, this is the man who bought my house. Right? Here you use a relative pronoun. So these forms are has, who, ho, han, hoi, hon, hois, whose, he, hein, hi, hon, heis, has. Ha, hu, ho, ha, ha, hon, hois, ha. So these are very much like the article without the tau on the front of it, right? Where you need to pay attention is in the masculine nominative singular and the neuter nominative singular. Pay attention to that because the article we are used to what for a masculine nominative singular article? Ha. Right? And ha is the neuter nominative singular relative pronoun. Has is the masculine pronoun. But has is just like the ending. So what you need to remember is that these go more like the endings in the article. Now the neuter used to be ta, right, in the article? Now it's just ha. There's always a little, you know, it's just the same except with a couple exceptions. Yeah, and that's just job security for you. That's all that is. You know, everybody would want to be a pastor if it were all that easy. These little twists, that's just job security. All right, let's look at the second paragraph under those endings. He says something you need to know here. A relative pronoun agrees with its antecedent in number and gender, right? So a relative pronoun, always has an antecedent, doesn't it? Now the antecedent is not always expressed in the text, but it always has a noun that it refers to, right? You know, he, or she, or it always refers to something that can be described by a noun. Same is true with the relative pronoun. So the antecedent, which is usually in the context and often in the sentence, the relative pronoun and the antecedent will agree in number and gender. Not necessarily in case. This is what you do know. But normally the case normally takes the case required by the syntax of its own clause, which is really true of all pronouns, isn't it? You know, if I said Bob walked to the store, in that sentence Bob is going to be in the nominative case, right? And then the next sentence I said a car hit him. What case is him going to be in?
Accusative.
Yeah, I'm surprised you could even think knowing that Bob got hit by a car. But it would be accusative, right? So pronouns just take the case that is required by their use in the sentence, right? And that's true of relative pronouns. So in this example, ha, aner, has, eothen, apa, tes, comes, ekruxeton, logon. Okay, so the man who came from the village was preaching the word. So the man, you could just leave the relative clause off, right? The man was preaching the word, but the relative clause is who came from the village. Now, why is it called a relative clause instead of a relative phrase, for example? We have prepositional phrases and relative clauses.
Because it has a subject of
Yeah, because there is a finite verb in the relative clause. There's a subject and verb. Same. We'll make no jokes about Santa Claus being a relative. So you understand how the relative clause works? Now, in this case, ha, aner, has, we have gender and number agreement between ha, aner, and has. Right? We also have a case agreement here. Why?
What did you say?
Why do they have the same case as well?
Because that's its place in the sentence.
Because both of them serve as the subject of their clause. So, who came, what's the subject of that clause? Who came from the village? And the subject of the clause is who. Right? The man preached, who came. All right, second example, the woman which we saw wanted to buy the book. Now, here we have which agrees with he, hune in gender and number, but not case. Why? What's its function in its clause? The woman, what's the core sentence? The woman
Which we saw.
wanted to buy the book. Because you could take which we saw out of there and it would still be a complete sentence. It would not say as much, but it would say the same thing. The woman wanted to buy the book. So which we saw really is a relative clause that modifies woman. Right? So if you're diagramming sentences, you diagram that. What case is a relative pronoun in? Why? Because it's the direct object of the verb. We saw which. So what's the subject? We. It's unexpressed, right? It's within the verb. We saw which. That doesn't make sense to say it that way. It's confusing because in English, the same is true in English here, by the way. But in English, normally our subject-object is determined by word order. But even in English, the relative pronoun is coming first. So if we said, the woman which we saw wanted to buy the book in English, right? Which we saw is a relative clause. To my knowledge, same terminology in English. Which would be the subject of the verb saw. But that's confusing to us in English because we want the object to be coming after the verb, right? You follow that? It would really be the woman whom we saw. Now, you'll know the difference. You'll know how to use properly who and whom in English, and you'll be able to impress your friends and relatives. Because who in English is in the subjective case, and whom in English is in the objective case. So if it's being used as an object, then you would say whom. I think he gets this right in his English in the example. How does he translate that example? The woman whom we saw wants to buy the book. Why is it whom? Because it needs to be objective case in English, just like it needs to be accusative case in Greek. Next example, the God whom you worship is a God of stone. That's kind of a bummer. Now, God whom, now, ho is your word whom. That matches God in gender, and number, but not in case. What case is it in?
Dative.
Dative. Why is it in the dative case?
Because it goes with S.
Nope.
The object of you worship.
Yes, it's the object of your worship. And the verb worship takes its object in the dative case. Yeah. See? Pretty impressive. So, a couple of words that do that would be the word for worship and the word for follow. So to worship or to follow takes their verb in the dative case. Right? You also need to know that verbs that express the five senses regularly take their object in the genitive case. So to touch, or hear, or see. Probably not so often with see in my recollection, but other words, to taste, to touch, to feel, hear, those kind of words will take their object in the genitive. Words like worship and follow, if you can categorize those, take their object in the dative. So that's what's going on here. So again, he will translate it whom, I'm quite sure. The God whom you worship is a God of stone. We have already heard these things which you are saying. So the relative clause is which you are saying. How does the relative clause function in that clause? Or how does the relative pronoun function in that clause? It's neuter. It's neuter plural to match these things. But what case is it? Accusative or nominative, but what case is it here?
Accusative.
Nominative.
No.
I figured I'd go with the other.
We have already heard these things which you are speaking.
No, it's nominative. It modifies the accusative subject.
Was it? What's the subject of legete?
You're speaking these things.
You are speaking which? It's confusing, but it's accusative case here. All right. Now, what you need to know, however, is sometimes, particularly, well, let's just read the next paragraph down. Sometimes the case of the relative pronoun is attracted to the antecedent. So instead of being in the proper case for its function in the sentence, the case is the same as the antecedent. An important and fairly common exception to the above occurs when the antecedent of the relative pronoun is in the genitive or dative case, and the relative itself would normally be in the accusative case as the object of a verb in the relative clause. In such cases, the relative pronoun is usually attracted to the case of the antecedent. Does that make sense to you? So, let's just do one of these examples. We are hearing the words, which the daughter of you is saying. Now, look at home. That almost looks like a participle of a me, doesn't it? But it's not. Why? It seems to me that the participle of a me does not have a rough reading mark. I agree. But also context would indicate. All right, so we are hearing the words. Now, there's our example right there. Hearing akuos taking its object, the words, in the genitive, right? So that's the direct object, but it's in the genitive. We are hearing the words, which the daughter of you is saying. So, which your daughter is saying. So, daughter is obviously the subject of the sentence. It's in the nominative. Is saying. What case would the relative be in if it went by the function in its sentence?
Accusative.
It would be in the accusative case because it's the direct object of lege. But it is in the genitive plural here. Why?
Because of its antecedent.
It's attracted to the case of what's the antecedent?
Let's go with
Logo.
That's right, lagon.
And that's one of the, akuo is one of the sense.
The sense word, so that's why that's in the
Takes the
genitive.
genitive.
That's right. Very good. All right, quite nice. Okay, now next, conditional relative clauses. Relative pronouns in a few other words are sometimes followed by conditional particles, on or on. We've talked about that before, thus introducing conditional relative clauses. Remember that the particle on tends to add indefiniteness, sometimes translatable by the suffix ever. We talked about this between when and whenever, right? One is definite, one is indefinite. Please be definite as much as you can. So here we have has, for the first example, has eon. So that is he who with eon becomes whoever, right? So whoever speaks against the Spirit. Excuse me. Or ha eon, whatever you ask. Or ha hu eon, wherever. So he who, if he might ask, right, literally, if you want to give it a real literal English translation, he who, if he might ask, or whoever asks, is better English, right? All right. In the last example, hatan is hate with on. Hate when with on is whenever. All right, now we have an indefinite relative pronoun. We've looked at has and we've looked at tis. Now we put them together to get hostis. And we had that in the vocabulary, didn't we? So the indefinite relative pronoun hostis, hatis, hati is the combination of the relative pronoun has and the indefinite pronoun tis. Not the interrogative, but the definite, the indefinite. Remember? Both parts of the word are declined. Did you get that? Both parts of the word are declined. Right? So, in the examples, hostis thele, whoever wishes. Hostis on, whoever does the will of God. And I did not trust the man who was speaking to me. Hostis. All those are hostis. Wish you would have given this example of in an oblique case, but he didn't. All right. We've talked about the verb oida. We've talked about the verb oida before. You can read that. It's fairly straightforward. And if you could do the odd of the New Testament, and number 1 on the English degree, that would be just fab. On the New Testament. Yeah, so we're in both chapters we're doing the odd out of the New Testament, and we are doing the first one of the English degree.
No, you know what? I think.
And we're cutting down on the homework from the grammar because we're doing the translation from 1 John. All right then. This is well as much, but we should be doing 3 chapters. But the next chapter is me verbs. Huh? You don't know what that means?
Oh, they just ended me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, remember how you had the omega conjugation? And it's called the omega conjugation because the very first ending is O, ace, A, amen, eve, usi. Well, in the me verbs, we have a new set of endings, the first of which is me. And those endings go missi mente asi. They're weird.
Missi mente asi.
So, where is he given? See him on the middle of page 170? The stem is do, right? Missi mente asi. So that's the same thing as oa se amaneta usi. Only in an verb. Does that make sense to you? So, important words like ditto me are me verbs. I give, I grant. But never fear, I'm going to give you some very easy ways of dealing with me verbs.
Are you gonna give us? Are you gonna give us the John? How much we're supposed to translate?
Yeah, if you want me to, I can do that. Now,
We're gonna continue, we're gonna do another
I
chapter.
want you to do the rest of chapter 2, actually. So for your first one, we're gonna do the rest of chapter 2. Okay, let's see. Wow, so we have me verbs in the declension of palus, declension of negos. We have third declension nouns and me verbs in the same chapter. That's just wild and crazy, isn't it?
12 through 28, huh?
Okay, boy, see, you could be going through this grammar a lot faster than me.
Is that a question or a
No.
statement?
But let's slow down for the sake of endings, right?
I'm not
Is that
Yes.
imperative or ridiculous?
Grammar is okay.
It's indicative of the way things are. But, you know, it's good for us to talk about me verbs a little bit. And you can see, if you come back here, I'm sure there's a chart of endings somewhere in here.
Kind of.
There's a whole bunch of
Starting
them.
204.
Does it give us any me verbs here, or what?
224.
All the way back to 224?
I think so. Isn't that what you?
Yeah, the present stem of didomi. Okay, very good. So you have didomi. You can see them there. You can see all of our happy. But notice the subjunctive. I'm on the top of page 225. Notice the subjunctive endings. Same as we know. The imperative endings. Weird things happen there, but pretty close to what we know. The participle, fairly straightforward. Aorist. Now check it out. Didomi is a kappa first aorist, so the endings are ka, kas, ke. Common, kate, common. How about that, huh? So I'm going to give you a trick for parsing me verbs. You'll probably give me more books for it or something.
Maybe so.
We should have started the first week of this class.
Yeah.
Oh, man. All right, well, it's 8:15, then we'll come back together and do some reading in our Bibles, and that will make us happy.
Yes, it's the book for me.
What do you had?
But do you want dessert?
Man, you missed do the grammar tonight, didn't you?
No. I'm gonna go.